Yesterday, we talked about what a great time it is to be a Rockies fan with a homegrown legend. Guess what? Another homegrown legend is heading for the Hall of Fame. And let's talk Twins.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully, as we are now entering my 6th season as a host here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter, or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram, same handle. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Be sure to follow us on the YouTubes. Subscribe, hit like, subscribe. This is a live one. We're going to do a bunch of live ones. So if you're watching us on the YouTubes, you can send in your comments. We may read your comment right here over the web. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. When you place a $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. Well, this is too big a show to go at it alone. We had a wonderful show yesterday with Paul Holden of Locked On Rockies. We talked about Todd Helton. We got to talk about Joe Mauer with Brandon Warren of Locked On Twins. Good to see you, buddy. First time I've seen you this new year.
Always great to be here. Happy New Year. I don't think the statute of limitation has run out on that. So yes.
It has. But because you and I haven't talked since the New Year, I will let it slide.
Got it.
I will let it slide. Hey, before we jump in, because we got a lot to talk about, we have Twins of the past, present, and future to talk about in this episode. But let's talk about the trivia question that I put out there. Of which it was it was Twins related. It was Twins related. Hold on a second. I have the wrong file open in front of me. The trivia question that I had from yesterday was Joe Mauer is going into the Hall of Fame as a Twin for life. Played for only one team. It'll just say Minnesota AL underneath it. Two other Hall of Famers were Twins their entire career, and not even Senators than Twins, just Twins their whole career. Adam Scott Bristol was so close. He said Kirby Puckett and Harmon Killebrew. You're half right. Kirby Puckett was one of them. Killebrew started off with the Senators and actually finished his career with the Kansas City Royals. But Court Stell got it right, and John Murphy Jr. got it right. The answer is Kirby Puckett. And do you know the other one? Brandon? Tony Oliva. That's right. Tony Oliva. So there you go. The answer was not someone did write to me, Steve Carlton. No, Steve Carlton ended his career with the Twins.
Not very well either.
No. He picked up another ring for his troubles. But there you go. But that was the correct answer is the late Kirby Puckett and Tony Oliva join Joe Mauer in the Hall of Fame as Twins for life. But hey, Brandon, I was talking with Paul Holden yesterday, who was just over the moon of Todd Helton getting into the Hall of Fame, mainly because that was his guy, and it was his guy he saw come up. He could have gone to other teams. He stayed with the Rockies his whole career. I would imagine Joe Mauer going to the Hall of Fame is a similar situation for you, that he was a guy, he was a Twin for life. He was from Minnesota, for goodness sakes. Tell us a little bit about the emotions you had yesterday afternoon when you got word that Joe Mauer, justifiably and rightfully so, got into the Hall.
So his debut, was about a month before I graduated high school, about a month and a half. Mm-hmm. And so he is the last player who is still playing from when I rooted to when I started covering them. And so to have both of those experiences and to not only hear how great of a person he was, but to experience it firsthand, I still get goosebumps thinking back to that day in 2018 where he caught that last pitch from Matt Belisle. Adam Abrams announces him as now catching Joe Mauer, and all that. It just gave me, it's still giving me chills. I'm wearing a sweater right now and I'm still chilly because it's just that cool of a moment. And he had the send off that anyone would dream of. He had the career that anyone would dream of. Honestly, playoff success would have been better, but he went out on his own terms. He went out to be married. He's married to a Minnesota girl with lovely children that are young yet. So he's got everything going for him. And now this summer on a sweltering day, most likely he'll be giving a speech in Cooperstown.
And the idea that I saw a couple of people who were trying to pull the old, if Mauer's in, then this person should be in, blah, blah, blah. First of all, he put up tremendous offensive numbers as a catcher, as in a position where you're not getting your catcher expecting them to be the center of your offense. And yet here we go. I mean, I know we're not supposed to look at batting average as the end all be all, and it isn't, but he is a 3-time batting champion. And of course, year he won the most valuable player. He led the league in batting, OPS, and slugging. And in case you couldn't figure that out, that also means he led the league in OPS and OPS plus, was a Gold Glove and Silver Slugger, had power, was a terrific run producer, and there was a absolute merry-go-round of starting pitchers on the Minnesota Twins during his time there. And yet, for a giant chunk of his career, the Twins remained a competitive playoff team. And that is no shortage, at least from an outsider's point of view, when he's the one who's leading that team. You have to look at him as a unique player.
So Dave, my co-host, was on the Zoom call with Joe and the other reporters, and he asked me if there was a question I wanted to ask Joe because I wasn't on there. And I just said, if I were to ask Joe, how much did he miss catching the rest of the way in his career? Because that's where his Hall of Fame case is entirely based. And it was just, he had that feel. He said, I had to have the ball in my hands as much as possible. Now, this is a guy who was a quarterback and also a shooting guard. So you're talking about someone who is at the forefront of everything. And I think that he's a big reason why that team was so respectable for so long. The end of his career, it was pretty rough. Early in Target Field, you got the concussions, you got Justin Morneau getting hurt, Michael Kadire leaving in free agency and all that. They did go through some tough times. There's no denying that. But Joe Mauer was a Twin through and through. And when you look back at his career, it should not be with anything other than adoration and adulation.
And I think finally put to rest any of the controversy about what them choosing him number one overall. Mark Pryor was the more heralded prospect. And that when the Twins drafted Mauer, not that Mauer was the 14th caller on the local sports talk. I mean, he was someone who was projected to go in the first round. But when they picked Mauer instead of Mark Pryor, the Twins got a ton of heat saying, oh, geez, you're being cheap. You had the obvious future Tom Seaver ace is sitting right there, and instead you drafted the local kid just to be a heartwarming story. Well, and it just turned out to be the right pick. Again, Mark Pryor was a fine pitcher, obviously, before he blew his arm out, and wound up having some success later on as well. I mean, he had a few years where he was a legit ace, and you maybe have been able to make that case here or there. But the fact of the matter is, Mark Pryor is ineligible for the Hall of Fame because he only played 5 years in the major leagues. And when his career was well over, Joe Mauer was the most valuable player of the AL.
Yeah, he hit all the marks that you want from a major league player, a great leader, great person inside and outside of the clubhouse. And I think the thing that I will recall most about him as a player is he never looked off balance, out of position, or uncomfortable. He always had the same demeanor. And I think it actually made fans have a little bit of a hatred for him because it almost kind of shows you, like, that you get rattled in those moments. Well, no, Joe doesn't even look like he's trying. He's cool, calm, and collected. And I think Minnesota fans thought that meant he didn't care, like he wasn't, gritting his teeth and trying real hard. But all I can look back on his career with is, with utmost respect. And I'm so glad I got to be there when it ended, because it just what a career-changing experience for me. It's probably something I'm going to remember for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I think that's pretty accurate. And again, at least from my perspective, again, I can't claim to be a Minnesota Twins fan, but obviously, unless I'm in Detroit or something like that, how could you hate the Twins?
Right.
He was someone who made a lot of fun. I mean, there was a lot of quality players he played alongside. I mean, Johan Santana, lest we forget, his peak was as good as any pitcher in the American League, especially in the era which he was playing in.
Yep.
Played alongside Morneau, played alongside Torrey Hunter. There were a lot of terrific players he played alongside, and Gardenhire had that team in the postseason year in and year out. Whether or not they advanced far was not the point. The fact that they were in there and he was the face of that team. And I'm very glad he got his due.
No question about it. And again, the playoff success would have been nice. And we hear a lot about rings, and especially a, NBA Hall of Fame, NFL Hall of Fame, where it's, different vibe,
Yeah.
MLB draft takes you so long to develop from, whereas those are just, you're in the league right away. So it requires some nuance. Yeah, Joe Mauer could have had more playoff success. He could have not had a traumatic brain injury that messed up his sight for the last 5 years of his career, but he made the best of it, and that's really kudos to him.
Well, look at that's my first look at of the night. So go, folks in Australia, take your first sip as I'm new. That's my first look at of the night. That's a wonderful talk about Twins of the past, but the Twins of the present could give Minnesota fans an interesting 2024 beyond just celebrating their beloved Joe Mauer. It is the NFL playoff time. It's down to 4 teams. Who's going to get in? Will it be the Lions? Will it be the 49ers? Will it be the Ravens? Will it be Taylor Swift? We'll find out for sure, and you better head on over to FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's 150 tomatoes in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use, you will find brand new ways to use the word parlay that you never thought were possible. You got the live same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab that features parlays. And you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays. Parlay, it's French for speak, and bet for money. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make that first bet a chip shot field goal so easy, even a Buffalo Bills kicker could make it. FanDuel, it's the official partner of the National Football League. Hey, Brandon Warren, I don't think you realize this, but Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on the YouTubes. Locked On Sports Today is there for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. And I can vouch for this. My dog woke me up at 3 o'clock this morning. I went over to Locked On Sports Today. Guess what? They were talking football. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We're here with Brandon Warren from Locked On Twins. We got a couple people. Adam Scott Bristol said that he's one of our regular listeners. I love Joe Mauer, but 922 games at catcher, Pudge at 2,400, Piazza at 1,600. I think Adam Scott Bristol is throwing it down. But you know what? Fine. And guess what? Pudge Rodriguez and Mike Piazza belong in the Hall of Fame. So I know, Adam, you're trying to stir the pot, but you know.
Well, I feel like Yadier Molina is going to be a trickier comparison because he played a lot longer and all that, but his defense was definitely his calling card against his offense. And so, not everybody catches. Pudge Rodriguez is like the epitome of the modern catcher. So sure, it stinks to pale in comparison to him, but everyone that's compared to him will be left wanting. Everyone who is compared to him will be left in the dust. So of course, Joe Mauer wasn't as durable as Pudge Rodriguez. Who was?
That's true. All right. Well, look at but Adam. At least he's open and honest, and he says, "I'm kind of a small hall guy. I am a big hall guy. I'm a very big hall."
For even discussing it with us, though, I appreciate that. I'm a big hall guy too because honestly, the more the merrier. It's a museum. Let's go in. Let's have some fun.
Yeah. Let's honor the past, but let's talk about first of all, let's talk about the relative present. The Twins got a monkey off their back. And I do think it's a big thing when there's a narrative that people can't shut up about. I mean, as a Red Sox fan, obviously 1918 was hovering over us like crazy, but there are other smaller narratives. You like the Pirates not making the postseason since Francisco Cabrera, blah, 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 blah. So when they finally made the postseason, it was like, great, no one has to ask that question again. And for the Minnesota Twins, who last won a playoff game, was Game 7 of the 1924 World Series when they were the Washington Senators. I may have to look that up. I may have gotten that wrong, but it sure seemed like it. Oh, by the way, it's 100 years since the Twins franchise's first World Series title when they were in Washington. But getting that monkey off the back of not having won a game since the first game of the 2004 Division Series, and not only that, but advancing and giving the Astros they didn't lay down for the Astros. They won a game in Houston. They played them. They played them about as tough as anyone would have hoped they could have played them. I think that getting that question off of the team has to be a positive thing moving forward to 2024.
Yeah, I mean, facing Houston in the playoffs is kind of like facing the Chiefs in the playoffs now. It's like if you're having a conference or league championship, they're pretty much just gonna appear there like out of thin air. So yeah, I thought I got chills. Again, we're going back to the chills. That grounder to Donovan Solano makes a diving stab and Twins get the win. The energy, just listening to it on the radio, listening to Corey Provis call it, was incredible. And I wish I had been there for it. It just didn't line up for me to get to do that. But you know what an incredible feeling that, you have to go through a lot of nonsense to actually appreciate a feeling like that. I think too, there was a lot of irony there. Michael Kay was calling the game. The Yankees owned the Twins over that stretch. I believe A-Rod was calling the game as well.
And A-Rod killed the Twins in both 2007 and 2009.
And he owns the Timberwolves and the Lynx across the street from Target Field. There were so many layers to this that it was just incredible. And then to have Donovan Solano, the guy who they signed at the end of the offseason for a couple $1 million, be such a big part of that team all season long. Just inexplicable, but awesome.
And I will say that I think you and I talked about this in an earlier episode, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I give Michael Kay a lot of credit because he did a really good job as a television announcer for the national feed. I think capturing and appreciating the weight, the gravitas of winning that series. And he called it in a way, he wasn't dismissive about it. He wasn't treating it like it was the Cubs winning the World Series, but he treated it like, hey, this is not a small thing for a successful franchise to finally get this monkey off of their back. And he did that, especially when they won the series against Toronto. He did a very good job. And I'm not always his biggest fan, but you got to give credit where credit's due.
Well, and broadcasting is a lot of nuance. When do you let the moment breathe? There's a lot more than just talking about what you're watching. And he really did a respectable job there. and hats off to him too.
Well, let's just talk a little bit about this off season where you've lost Sonny Gray, you've lost some of the key players on the team. What is your thought of the team? And in the final segment, we're going to go over the AL Central as a whole. But just talking about Minnesota right now, what are some of your thoughts on the Twins? Especially, I mean, Gray is a big loss, obviously, as he went to St. Louis, where I think all pitchers must pitch at one point in their career. I think that's the law.
Yep.
But what are your thoughts about what they've done, what they didn't do, and how they look?
It's not as bleak as it probably seems because they haven't really done anything. I mean, they claimed Bubba Thompson on waivers. I don't know if you knew that, but yeah, big news popping. They were in a better spot though than a lot of teams. You know, they had a tough season from Carlos Correa. They had virtually a no season from Byron Buxton. Jose Miranda completely fell off the radar. They had injuries with Alex Kirilloff. Trevor Larnach hasn't panned out like they had hoped, and they still won the division. So there is some expectation that some of those things will turn around out of sheer luck or how the world works, but they can't just sit idly by, sit on their hands as the rest of the division just kind of does their thing. They still do need another starter. Chris Paddock coming off injury is going to be helpful, but how much can you really lean on a guy coming off Tommy John? He pitches a reliever in the playoffs.
Right.
So they're going to have to do something. I think they still end up trading for, basically doing another Pablo Lopez type trade. It just comes down to prospects versus big leaguers versus signing someone in free agency and saying, forget it. But the TV deals have thrown a wrench into that to this point.
Right. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the fact that the biggest thing going in the Twins' favor is not who they signed and not who they're developing, but rather where they're playing. And I'm here to remind you that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is there for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports streaming channel 24/7. I've talked to a lot of people who have said, oh, it's so unfair that the Dodgers are spending this and this is spending that. And I keep pointing out, unless you are in a division with the Dodgers, that doesn't really affect you. And even if you are in a division with the Dodgers, just ask the defending National League champion Arizona Diamondbacks.
Yeah.
At some point, you just say, well, just get to the dance and roll the dice. No, the Twins can't spend like the Dodgers. No, the Twins can't spend like, well, I guess the Dodgers. The Dodgers are the only team really out there spending huge. I was going to say the Red Sox, but they're not. The Yankees, they're not. I mean, but the Twins, you and I just, before we started rolling on this, the White Sox are tearing the team apart. They're going to be trading Dylan Cease, and they're going to trade everything except the statue of Harold Baines outside the stadium. The Tigers are, they're still trying to figure out who the hell they are. The Royals have some talent and aren't as bad as they were when they were a 100-loss team.
Right.
Yet file this under who are you kidding? And then Cleveland, whatever name you want to call them, look at there's my second look at they have this never-ending supply line of talented pitchers who somehow slide into Cleveland, but they have a brand new manager, and if they don't start the season well, Bieber and a couple of other pitchers are probably going to be gone. According to the collective bargaining agreement, a team from the AL Central has to go to the playoffs. So it might as well be the Twins at this point.
Yeah.
They're going into it, I think, as the favorites. That's what I said last year about the Cardinals, too, and they wound up in last place. So they can fall on their face, but I don't see what other team is going to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, the Guardians, they waved the white flag and traded Savale, and then they claimed all those guys. It was really a puzzling time. I think that their devil magic in 2022 ran out in 2023. And I also think, too, that they just don't have the horses on offense. Now, Maybe Bo Naylor takes a step forward. Maybe Manzardo is a big factor for them. But I just don't see it with their offense. I just don't think player for player they can go toe-to-toe with the Twins. And honestly, maybe not even the Royals, because I really like, Bobby Witt Jr., and I think they've got some other young guys who I think MJ Melendez is going to have a nice year. I really I'm buying into MJ Melendez. So I don't see it with Cleveland. They'll probably make me eat my words. But the Twins are not in a position to sit on their hands, but they're in a good spot would be how I would try to effectively hedge my bets there.
And look at you and I both. I think there's some talent on the Kansas City team.
Yep.
I think they're going to improve. But let's say an astronomical improvement is 20 wins, right? If a team jumps up 20 wins in 1 year, that's an astonishing improvement, right? If the Royals jump up 20 wins, that means they're 76 and 86.
That's the exact number I was going to. 76 and 86 sounds about right.
Yeah, and which would be a monumental leap in the right direction.
Yep.
And yet, if you're you look it up, and 85 wins probably wins that division.
And where do those wins come from besides Chicago? Cleveland is still going to hang in there. Detroit was surprisingly tough in the division. They lost Eduardo Rodriguez, added Kenta Maeda. They've kind of, they've added some players where I'm kind of curious if the fit is really there, but they're trying. And Spencer Torkelson's going to turn a corner here. I love Riley Green. I think he's one of the most talented players in the AL Central. I think they have a general idea of where they're trying to go. I just don't know, a multi-year deal to Kenta Maeda. I'm not sure about that, but they're trying, and that matters.
They're the one team I think that if the Twins have a big regression, then this could be like that year when the Padres won the division with 82 wins. I mean, this is like, this could be a team that if the Twins gel and have a quality season, they could just, it's a balanced schedule. So they're not going to be able to have the moments where they just pummel the in-division teams. I think the White Sox are going to be the worst team in the division. I do think the Royals are going to make improvement. Cleveland is interesting. I think Detroit is interesting, but I don't think any of those teams are winning teams yet. So I think and in some ways, I didn't mean to step on you there for a second, but in some ways, I think Minnesota almost has to look at what could we do to construct our team to be a playoff team almost out of the gate. Because if you say, hey, if 84, 85 wins is going to punch our card, then we got to look how could we match up against Tampa or Houston or Baltimore or Texas, or even if the Yankees get their act together, like how could we match up against them? And it sounds weird, but that's the benefit of playing in the American League Central.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think the White Sox might even be the worst team in baseball. Honestly, it's going to be tough. But
possibly.
Yeah, and a lot of it is lining up. In October, you need 2-3 good starters, but a bullpen helps, especially if you go 5 and dive or even less. And so, it'll come down to they had Paddock out there, they had Brock Stewart, they had Louis Varland. Stewart will still be out there. Varland might start. Paddock is going to start. So then it comes down to, do guys like Jorge Alcala contribute? They've got enough guys out there, Jordan Balazovic, who have either good fastballs or excellent secondary stuff. So if you beef up your bullpen, have enough starters, and get enough offense, you don't have to be, Twins fans think you have to win 110 games and have losses to win in the playoffs. Not at all. Look at the seasons that the Diamondbacks and Rangers had. Neither of those teams were flawless. The Rangers got nothing from Jacob deGrom. Scherzer was not what they had needed. I mean, granted, he's still a great pitcher, but they had a lot of things go wrong. The Atlanta Braves,
their bullpen was horrible down the stretch.
Yeah, exactly.
Horrible down the stretch.
A lot of things going wrong for teams. Ronald Acuna didn't even play most of the year that the Braves won. So all I'm saying is, Twins fans, it doesn't have to be perfect to end in a World Series title. You get to the dance, you figure it out from there. And now that the monkey is off your back, the 0-18 is now, I guess it was 2-18 for a bit. You don't really have to think about that. It doesn't have to take up any real estate in your mind, and you can just play the games, or in my case, watch the games.
That's right. Well, look at Oh, I did 3 look-its this, 3 of them this year. So get good and drunk in, my friends in Australia. Hey, let's, before we go on, let's, the new trivia question. When the American League was formed in 1901, one of the teams in the league were the Baltimore Orioles. Another team in the league were the Milwaukee Brewers. But those two teams moved and are now different franchises that we all know and love. So what team did the original Milwaukee Brewers become, and what team did the original Baltimore Orioles become in the American League? And I'll give you a hint. One of them is not the Brewers, and the other is not. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a trivia question. Put the answers down here on YouTube, or put them at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. Or don't you answer it? Don't you answer it, Brandon?
No, I'm not going to.
All right. And Brandon, where can people follow your show?
Well, it's Locked On Twins, and we're on the socials and all that fun stuff. I did, though, want to say, hey, do you remember, this is a fun trivia question, who Joe Mauer faced in his Major League debut?
Oh, God, I do not know. I'm going to say
Sabathia started for Cleveland that night.
Oh,
so,
wow. Okay.
Incredible matchup.
Wow, there you go. There you go.
Joe batted like 8th that night, I think.
I would not have got that one correct. But where can they follow your show?
At Locked On Twins on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And we have a lot of fun over there. Dave has been an incredible addition to the team, and we're having a lot of fun remembering some guys and waiting for the Twins to do something meaningful.
Well, and I hope you talk a lot about Steve Lombardozzi. Talking Twins with Brandon Warren. I'm your pal Sully. I am a father of twins, and this has been Locked On MLB for the 24th day of January 2024. I'm yours, Paul Francis Sullivan. I'll say it again. You can call me Sully.